We just finished day 5. Group B is done. Today was both at the same time disappointing and exciting. I've got a lot of mixed feelings about it. In other news, in the middle of watching the games, I got a new chair. This shit is comfortable. I'm not sponsored by these guys. I'm way too small of a channel to even think that I could get sponsored. But, I highly recommend if you have the extra cash to spare. That said, let's talk about the day. A couple of things. Again, as mentioned beforehand in all of my other videos, down below I'll have highlights of the games of the day. These highlights were made by the VCS region. Go check out their YouTube channel. Their region is fantastic. They make great games and all the rest. Miss them. Wish that they could participate, but COVID's a thing. Also, there are no tiebreakers today, and not for the reasons that people may think, but also at the same time it's because of the reasons people may think. It's confusing, but we'll get to it when we get to it. For all of those who are watching, thank you again for watching, and like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and leave your comments down below about your thoughts about the day. I would love to hear about it. Without further ado, though, let's start with today's first game, which is Detonation Focus Me versus Edward Gaming. That was the amount of control a team has had. That was the most amount of control a team has had all tournament long. It's hard to explain why after 5 minutes, Detonation Focus Me had no chance of winning, because no team has shown this much control for vision, neutral objectives, lanes, the pacing of the game. Literally every single aspect of the game was dictated by Edward Gaming. They got to decide everything from laning phase to mid game to every neutral contesting to just the end game. It's pretty disheartening because teams don't usually have to be the better laner to win games. But given how much of this game was controlled because of the leads accrued during the laning phase, it's hard to make make an argument against that. Most of the time these teams are drafting, some of these lower seeded teams will draft for the laning phase expecting that to be like the end all be all that's needed or necessary. And it's given this game at this point, it would be hard to argue for or against either way. But let's be serious here. The lack of proactive movement on the side of DFM is understandable. Any fights that they start or attempt at any contesting or set up a neutral objective is met with this like thick vision denial and strong skirmishes, one right after the other. No move is the right move, and that leads to a slow and painful defeat in 25 minutes. Yes, that is a quick game, and I described it as slow and painful. And EDG shows us the power of strong coordination and control and demonstrate when everyone moves around the map in synchronous and with informed purpose. The enemy team usually has no ability to contest anything you start. There was a huge gap of skill between these two teams. And given how the rest of the day plays out, I don't think that's true, that there's a huge gap in skill, but there's clearly enough of an advantage accrued during the laning phase that it just snowballed out of control. And that usually doesn't happen but Edward Gaming played off of it beautifully. And Detonation Focus Me, unfortunately, weren't proactive early enough, fast enough to stop anything from happening. And it's one of those things that are really hard because teams don't expect to have to, like, lean in on that aspect of play. So, what does that make of anything? Right? It's mostly a show of force for Edward Gaming. They're saying, hey, look, this is how solidly we can crush a lower seeded team. Any team that seems to be around this level, watch out. This is something I was trying to allude to for Cloud9 yesterday. There's not much extra to say. They nailed everything that was needed to be. And with that, Edward Gaming wins and are 4-0 and secure a quarter spot. And Detonation Focus Me are 0-4 and aren't in control of their fates. Everything is decided for them by the next game, by whoever wins. And with that, we head on to T1 versus 100 Thieves. What an unfortunate way to end a tournament run. 100 Thieves ran a great draft and a decent enough early game that you might think they could pull it off. But their lack of consistent vision, overly cautious engage, and map movement with no wave manipulation to speak of, some weak contesting towards the neutral objectives, and just one after the other, a whole bunch of aspects of the gameplay compounded to a game that ends with 100 Thieves laying down to die. There is zero proactivity from this game. It really looked like the other game, but the difference is that T1 wasn't the one that were being, like, super controlling of literally everything. It was 100 Thieves lacking the proactivity throughout the entirety of the game. Now, T1, on the other hand, do need a lot of work also. Their early mid-game vision left a lot to be desired and was often too shallow or not cleared enough. And the neutral setups left also a lot of room to be able to contest for them when they shouldn't have been able to put themselves in that position to begin with. Especially if they're in a poke composition where they shouldn't even be in that position at all. And a lot of decisions that T1 were making in this game were pretty bizarre overall. Especially given the fact that they were poke composition, aiming to, or siege composition to be more specific, aiming to teamfight on a regular basis against a composition that was designed to counter siege compositions. And they got away with way more than they should have because 100 Thieves just laid down and die. Now, T1 is still managed to manipulate waves very well and utilize the one Baron that they get super well, allowing them to close out the game pretty cleanly with no contest. And that's something to commend, is that T1 has been a consistency in terms of how to close out a game. The second they know they can do so, they pull the trigger and just go for it. And this is one of those things where it feels very unfortunate to look at a team that this was literally a, to quote the theme, make or break moment for them. And they broke down. I wish that we could hear what was going on at the time, where like we could get, like, read their minds for what was happening, because their composition was so heavily reliant on team fighting, and they had so many opportunities and did nothing with it. Yeah, it was pretty depressing. And T1, on the other hand, didn't just snowball this out of control. They really should have been able to snowball this out of control, given the very little that 100 Thieves are doing. I do want to preface this with saying that this is a much cleaner T1 today, and I don't know if they've gotten back in form for international play compared to their old selves, but they are going to qualify from this, right? Uh, T1 wins and become 3-1 and qualify for the quarters and are a step closer from being able to set up the tiebreaker for first. And 100 Thieves go 1-3, and with DFM are eliminated from Worlds. And they only have the opportunity to play for, spoilers. And this is the part where everybody was like, well, shit, the days doesn't matter anymore. Every other game is just formalities. No. So we thought. With that, we get to Edward Gaming versus T1. Now, I came into today thinking Edward Gaming would get this win, guarantee first place. And, there's a lot of quick games today. I expected them to become the victors, but T1 really played around the vision and wave manipulation super well in this game also. The way that they approached their vision game allowed them to confidently play towards picks and take advantage of the poor map movement Edward Gaming had this game, which is a super baffling concept given how they played out their last one. Now, EDG also played with a little disrespect towards the pick potentials T1 had. A lot of them moving forward, not understanding their limits, or not expecting T1 to just go and just like run rampant with their composition and their win conditions. Now, despite EDG having a solid vision play as well, T1, as mentioned previously, on top of theirs, turned the vision denial to 11. The map was dark for the vast majority of the game for Edward Gaming. And now, I mentioned the vision so much because of how much this game hinged on the ability to act. And the proactive and how to act and be proactive around game information that's available on the map. And because of it, EDG opted into poor fights and engages so many times, and they couldn't contest against the neutral objectives properly. They lacked proactivity and overall couldn't play to their win conditions in that game. It's a super unfortunate scenario to look at this because EDG with their composition could very easily, with no doubt in my mind, very easily manage to find a way to like play around the random picks that T1 were doing. But T1 was so on top of their game with this vision, and also having a solid understanding of their map movement and their own win condition. It just all of that compounded to a very one-sided game, which was super unexpected for me going into today. And to me, this is just flips the expectations of EDG right around. They are one of the favorites to win the tournament. And this is not the first time that many of the Chinese teams have been lauded as a favorite to win the tournament. And that the Korean regions had only one team that people were like, yes, Damwon for sure, favorites for the tournament. One of the top 4, easy peasy. The other ones, maybe. Have you seen the Chinese lineup so far? And yet, this is day 2, or this is like 2 days in a row now that the Chinese region has like faltered and crumbled underneath the Korean ones. Now, with this, T1 wins and are 4-1, and EDG are also 4-1, and are set up for a likely tiebreaker for the first seed if everything else stays as expected. So long as EDG doesn't lose to 100 Thieves and T1 doesn't lose to Detonation Focus Me, or one or the other happening would be wild and switch things up. But to be expected, we're expecting a tiebreaker at the end of the day. And with that, we go to 100 Thieves versus Detonation Focus Me. Wow, this is a fiesta. Honestly, Detonation Focus Me had control of the game properly, moving around the map and leaning into their win conditions for most of this. Now, while 100 Thieves had to answer everything, and they contested well, but mostly worked on the back foot for everything that was happening. This is one of those games that, like, it lasted far too long and was sloppy on all ends. Detonation Focus Me had a much better control from their part. And I want to say that this is a crazy good show of force from them. They had pretty decent vision. It still lacked a bit into the vision denial itself. Arya absolutely tearing it up around the map. Evie doing great. Like, the players individually were doing fantastic. And Huhi, for his end on 100 Thieves, is just a standout overall. This is still two teams with fantastic players that played. It's not great. It's a lot of fun to watch this game if you wanted to do so, but there's super not a lot to talk about it. So much that, like, I wrote my notes improvise for the video because the stakes are so low, but the morale is important, and it helps provide context to how close these teams are across the four groups, even with the one-sided feel of it all. And as it notes, these teams are fairly close. Remember, Cloud9 lost to Detonation Focus Me in a fairly convincing fashions for tiebreakers and play-ins. And Cloud9 made it to the quarters. Now, this could be said for a whole bunch of mess of stuff like, oh, what does it mean about the format? Is the format bad? The format has been bad for a long time. No one's talking about that. But when you come into a tournament, you're expected to win. And if you don't win, and you're just hoping the format just benefits you in some way, shape, or form, then I don't know what else to tell you, but you might not win the tournament. We can talk about, though, this crazy end of this game. And for those who didn't know, this game lasted forever, but Detonation Focus Me, for some reason, teams are just straight up doing whatever the fuck they want for ending a game. So they go and try to end the game on multiple occasions. They have a Tryndamere top. This is already a wild mess of a time. Evie is just on his game. And they don't have any inhibitor, any Nexus towers to speak of. They could have been backdoored easily. So they baited Baron. 100 Thieves has to answer. And 100 Thieves rush back to stop this from happening. And Huhi with the clutch flash knockback headbutt to the fountain laser to save the game. This is literally the only part of the game that's like that I would recommend watching. It's great. This shows a lot of fortitude and strength and coordination of 100 Thieves that didn't show for the entire time. And it's unfortunate that Detonation Focus Me lost this way. It really is. But given how close this game was between the two of them, it just tells me that, like, Detonation Focus Me, 100 Thieves, everybody else from the rest of the tournament that we expected to be bad are neck and neck in a lot of spots. And some people may talk about the gap that exists. And sure, a gap exists, but I think the gap exists in terms of coordination, not individual players. With that, 100 Thieves wins and are 2-3. Detonation Focus Me are 0-5. And both of them play one last game each against the Titans of their groups to make statements Oh, did they ever? Especially in this next game where we have Detonation Focus Me versus T1. And whoo boy! Oh man. Don't let the group score fool you. Detonation Focus Me challenged T1 during the first 6 minutes of the game. Arya with his Zoe is doing some work. Now, this game matters a lot more than the last one did. Uh, T1 needed to show that they could successfully control this game from start to finish with measured response and proper coordination. And they do so. Mostly. Despite Arya's fantastic showing. T1 never gave anything back to them at any point. They were choosing their fights wisely and knowing well that their other roles outside of the mid lane were stronger pound for pound. So they held solid vision control. This is a little shallow for my liking. A lot of the vision in this day was very shallow and defensive, more than they were aggressive and trying to attempt to make plays, which is a bizarre take on the situation. They had fantastic neutral play and wave manipulation. The same buzzwords I use all the time. And the best map movement of the tournament so far. There is something to be said about the absolute coordination T1 had. No matter what the positioning was, it was never in any particular way that Detonation Focus Me could benefit from engaging, moving forward, taking a kill, doing whatever. Their whole time, the positioning that T1 had forced Detonation Focus Me to opt into weird, bad fights. Now, DFM on their part have a solid approach to their win condition, but they looked fairly weak with their coordination, making it very hard for them to fully execute on the plan and a lot easier for T1 to punish in the long run. DFM had a solid, fantastic run at Worlds. They should be commended on their success, and I can't wait to see what they do next year. Take what you've learned this year, like in stride. Take what it was like about the coordination between some of the much better teams that you faced. Take what you learned about the application of vision denial and vision in aggressive scenarios that allow you to snowball lead. Take the lessons you learn about properly setting up neutral objectives and how you approach contesting them. These are all things that your region would benefit from. And I know that it's a time and true tell of the situation where you look at a team, see them do much better than expected during a tournament, and go, they're going to bring what they learned all the way back to the region. And you'd think that'd be the case. But it usually isn't. And I hope they do actually bring this back towards their region, because God knows the Japanese region really needs more than just two teams coming in to Worlds over and over again. With that, T1 wins and are 5-1, securing at minimum a tiebreaker with EDG, and DFM end 0-6 with their last game at Worlds. So, instead of souring your taste with this, how about we move on to 100 Thieves versus Edward Gaming. And with that, the spoil comes. No tiebreakers! What a fantastic performance out of 100 Thieves. I must say, I'm super impressed with the improvement from one game to another. So let's start off with EDG. Okay, they looked a little lost and unsure on how to approach their win conditions this game. They're oftentimes creating engages for their team fights that did not suit them well. And even weirder was the choice in general to team fight against a composition designed to do so. Their lack of vision, weak map movements, and poor early game approach, coupled with a composition that had an unclear win condition, hurt them for the entirety of the game. Now, 100 Thieves on their end, all right, had a fantastic approach to their win condition and vision to guarantee they would win as many team fights as possible. This is pretty nutty to watch, quite honestly. If you can barrel through the pauses, or like just skip them, 100 Thieves grabs control super early into this game. And it would, sometimes you look at these and you think, oh, it's unchecked aggression. EDG will check the aggression, contest them at this stuff, and then lose. But they don't. 100 Thieves moves around the map early in ways that allow them to keep hitting their win conditions over and over and over again. And then ADG's wound up with like a situation where it's dark all the time. They can't approach their opponent in any way without getting blown up. Nothing that they'll do will actually move the game forward, because if they try to attempt to split push, they're going to get their butts beat in. Like, jeez Louise. Now, it isn't enough just to win team fights. 100 Thieves also continue to pressure and keep up the pace to find opportunities to balloon these leads even more. So, what did this mean overall in general? Well, it's unfortunate, but 100 Thieves technically still ended the day with a better win-loss ratio than C9. And it looks like the group of death was Group B all along. But as much as we also, like in the previous video, commended Detonation Focus Me on their play, even if they ended in 0-6, they did super well. We should commend 100 Thieves about the approach that they had during this tournament. They may not have lived to their expectations here, but they did so phenomenally well overall that you can't help but commend them on this situation. 100 Thieves came into the tournament expecting to be eliminated 100% and ended up in a situation where if people started discussing formatting issues, 100 Thieves did so well in this game that it breaks my heart that there is no losers bracket for them. But like FBI mentioned in his interview, he'll probably bring back this information to the LCS and use it to get back here next year. And I would love to see every one of these members to come back. It'd be great. EDG, on the other hand, what the fuck happened to you guys? This wasn't like a rando team. You knew this was a fairly contestable team, and you just kind of disrespected the situation and then did nothing to rectify it. Oh well. You lost your chance at first seed again. And now you're going to have to face a significantly harder opponent. Oh god, that's going to be a really interesting one. Well, 100 Thieves wins and are 3-3, ending their worlds on a positive run. Or on a positive note. And EDG are 4-2 and lose out their tiebreaker opportunity, settling on the second seed for quarters and handing first seed to T1. So, What do I think about this overall? I really thought today was going to be a boring day. It started off like it was going to be a boring day and ended in quite spectacular fashion with an unexpected win. Now, not going to lie, this is a regular trend for NA where during the last moment do they show brilliance that could have been really fun to experience during a best of 5 format. But dwelling on it doesn't help in the long run, right? There is something to be said about how 100 Thieves and DFM and Detonation Focus Me reacted and approached their games towards Edward Gaming and T1. Detonation Focus Me looked like they were ready to fight everything and contest everything and make sure that they were going to meet their opponents on their terms. Right? They weren't going to come in like you have to meet the terms of Japan and then they lose. No, they came in properly adapting and adjusting to their scenario. Now, I wish that they had experience fighting or like laning against better laners. This you would have less scenarios where Arya is the only one coming out of laning phase positively and everybody else is just waiting for something to happen on the map to like get things going. But I think that has more to do with the region needing to be developed before anything else can happen. 100 Thieves on their end. Yeah, 100 Thieves is interesting. I wish that we would have had a loser's bracket for them. I think that they would have improved significantly. They had very solid drafting all around. They had a good understanding of what their win conditions were every time. And it's just an unfortunate take on the whole thing. It's always unfortunate whenever a team loses, right? Like no one wants the whole team to like every team to lose, but but everybody wants the one team to win that they support. So I just have to say that maybe format changes next year, but for the moment, they lost fair and square and made sure to upset things as they went out. And honestly, that's the best anybody can ask for. T1 have the opportunity to face off Cloud9 and EDG to face off against Damwon Kia. But we also still have 4 more teams to figure out who's going to come in. But given already those matchups, I don't favor any of the second seeds right now. The second seeds that we're going to look at is and say we are having a rough time. And not just because they're second seed, but because those teams are terrifying right now for best of 5s. The 2 number 1 seeds are both Korean and crazy good at best of 5s. And you know what? I'm here for it. Hopefully we get some more of this stuff tomorrow and the day after. Because and probably better, hopefully. Because those are the 2 closest teams overall in terms of the entirety of Worlds. Yeah. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments down below what you think. Did you have a game that was your favorite? Anything else that you're expecting or hoping for in terms of the Group C day? Let me know. And again, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Like and subscribe to enjoy the video. And we'll see you tomorrow.